Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Success is a Choice podcasting network. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler. We appreciate everybody joining us, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Rumble, LinkedIn, Facebook, whether you're listening to the audio version here on the Success is a Choice podcast network. We appreciate it. If you would remember to kindly rate, review, subscribe, smash the like button, hit the little thumbs up, whatever you want to do, that would be awesome. Well, our guest today, very excited to have Will Roleson on the show today. Will and I actually worked with each other for a little bit back in the day when we were kind of starting off at Kent State University, but now he is the Associate Executive Director for College Sports Communicators. If you haven't heard of that group, you probably actually have. You just didn't know it. They formerly were CoSIDA, so the Sports Information Directors Association. So we're going to get into all that here and a lot of other topics about college sports with Will. So Will, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Jamie. Good to be here and good to catch up. We were a little younger in those days at Kent State, but hopefully we've made the world just a little bit better place in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, I think I was smarter back then, or at least I thought I knew it all. And that was before I knew that I didn't. Before I didn't know what I didn't know. You know, you start off young and you think you know it all, and then as you get older, you get wiser.
Exactly. I'm in the same boat, and I passed 50 just a little bit ago. So hopefully I've got more to give back at this point and learned a little bit through the years.
Yeah. So I mentioned we were both at Kent State for a little bit back in the 90s, back a long time. As my 13-year-old says, back in my day. I guess I say that too much. Back in my day, this, back in my day, that. But tell us a little bit about your background. Give us kind of a 30,000-foot view, and then spin that into CoSIDA and College Sports Communicators.
Sure thing. Grew up in southeastern Indiana, a small town called Brookville, and ended up going just across the border into Ohio to Miami University, of course, the Mid-American Conference. I took an internship at the University of Wisconsin for a year. This is back in about 93. And then a year at Host Communications, which is now part of the Learfield IMG family in the publishing division, but really settled in athletic communications at Kent State University, starting in 96 as an assistant SID. By 1999, I was promoted to the head SID position. And then, 2002 was just a breakthrough year. The men's basketball team went to the Elite Eight. That was just a great thing to be part of. And after a number of years there, I joined the Horizon League as an assistant and then associate commissioner here in Indianapolis. And by the time we get to about 2011, joined the staff, which what was then, as you mentioned, College Sports Information Directors of America, and been there ever since, working remotely long before remote became a thing everybody had to do once we got into the pandemic. So I've enjoyed that. It's great to be, connected to sports, even though I'm not on a campus or in a conference office any longer. So, college athletics is what I've done in some form or another. And I foresee that continuing to be the case.
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about you were working remotely before others were, that same with me. And I was doing Zoom meetings before the pandemic, and it was amazing how many people thought that was magical. Man, how can you do these presentations and meetings, online? And then once the pandemic, the lockdowns came, then everybody realized, it wasn't really much of a trick. It was really actually pretty easy. And so, I stopped being an expert, or I stopped being a genius.
Exact. I still don't claim to be an expert about working from home, but I've done it, as I mentioned, for 12 years now. And our staff is 5 people, all remotely based across the country. At one point, we were in all 4 time zones across the continental U.S. So Zoom and its predecessors, were vital, and we wonder how we did business before those tools came along.
Absolutely. Well, formerly CoSIDA, College Sports Communicators. Now, you deal with a lot, not just sports information, which is one of the reasons you guys changed the name or changed the branding. What does College Sports Communicators do, and why should that matter to a lot of listeners, whether they're in athletics or just fans? Why would it even matter to have this organization? Why does that matter in the life of even a fan?
Well, again, any business out there probably has an association, management group that, they work with, even if you aren't familiar. I met one that deals with, concrete statues. There's a national association for that. But we've been around for 65 years. And, what a lot of people don't know is we're the second oldest college management association out there, second only to the business managers. And then, 65 years as CoSIDA. And what we found is that communications in all forms, and certainly in college athletics, has just changed so drastically. You've got people in graphic design, video, live streaming, social media specialists. And, with having SID right in the middle of our name, again, Sports Information Director, was that truly representative of all those people who didn't prior have a home, as a national management association. There are certainly groups for compliance, facilities, marketing, academic advisors, et cetera. But those folks didn't have a home, and we thought we're all in communications and we all need to be working together. So if we can change our name to something that, again, is more representative of everyone in collegiate communications and collegiate creatives, as we've termed them, we need to do that. And it was a long process, a very deliberate process, and one that ultimately required a membership vote. So we had to be upfront and transparent about why we were doing it and everything. And another thing about CoSIDA, again, if you don't know the name, a lot of people do know of the Academic All-America program, which we've been doing for all of those 65 years plus, and honoring the best and the brightest on the field, in the classroom, out in their community. And something we're really proud of. And again, if you don't know about us, you probably know about that, because we're there to salute and support the student athlete.
Well, I'm a sports junkie. A lot of people that watch this are sports junkies too. And so you've probably been to games, or you as an audience have probably been to games just like me, where you get there and there's like a handout or something with, did you know, or all these fun facts and things like that. And I just eat those up. I love reading about these teams and the athletes and the fun facts. And that's one of the things that people that are working at, in this industry, they do. They provide these fun facts. Are you a stat guy? Are you like a trivia guy?
Certainly. I still do some freelancing, at local colleges and universities, either on their table crew on game days or sometimes with television. So I love to do that. When you work from home, any opportunity you get to, again, get out and about is fun. And if it can be in sports, all the better. So that's a lot of fun. And, college sports, ought to be fun when it's all said and done. Yes, it's a business, but it ought to be fun.
Yeah, well, it was definitely fun. When you're working, it's definitely fun when you're working with a winning team. And we had mentioned that we were both at Kent together, but when I came in 1996, and that was Gary Waters' first year. And I was his graduate assistant his first year. And he sits me down for the interview and he says, "Now, Jamy, you're going to come here and you're going to see for 2 years what it's like to build a program. And then you're going to leave and we're going to be really good." And I'm like, okay, that's not really the greatest sales pitch ever. Once I leave, then you're going to get good. But that was the case. I was there for 2 years. Then that third year, they won the MAC and they beat Indiana in the first round of the NCAA tournament. But even a couple of years later, they had an even better run that you were a part of as well. I got to, cheer it on from the sidelines or cheer it on from afar. But talk a little bit about your memories of that amazing Elite Eight run. And that was after Gary Waters had left to go to Rutgers to be their coach. There was a new coach in, but a lot of those same players made that Elite Eight run. Talk about the excitement of that run.
That was just an incredible year. As you mentioned, Gary Waters had gone on out to New Jersey, and we brought in Stan Heath, who'd been an assistant at Michigan State under Tom Izzo. And at the beginning of the year, there were some, issues on the team. They weren't all buying in, but then it was a very senior dominated, a very experienced team, and just, went on a roll and, had won, almost, 20 games by the time it was all, said and done. We beat Oklahoma and Alabama in the first 2 rounds of the tournament. And the guys, I will tell you to a person, were convinced they were going to win, even if the seeding didn't indicate that. And then you get to the Sweet 16, which in itself was an incredible, run, and they beat a good Pittsburgh team there. And, then they get to play IU and in the Elite Eight, who had just beaten Duke. So, IU was really good that year. Of course, they ended up going on to the national championship game, losing to Maryland. And I'm still convinced that Kent State was every bit as good as IU that year. I think the Hoosiers hit like 15 of 19 from 3-point range that year. And really that was almost, by design, because Jared Jeffries had just abused Duke the game before. And our team was like, we are not letting him beat us. And so we doubled down, and their outside shooters, Tom Coverdale, Dane Fife just were on fire. If it weren't for, what I think is one of the greatest 3-point shooting performances I've seen in person, Kent State might have been in the Final Four, before George Mason, before Butler, before VCU, before Loyola. And how much would that have changed, the MAC or Kent State basketball? Now, Kent State has gone on and won 20 games almost every year since. But that's a big step from Elite Eight to Final Four. But amazing to be part of that. Stan Heath did everything I asked of him as an SID in terms of interviews. He took advantage of it. Of course, this is really pre-social media, so we didn't have that added to it. And of course, he parlayed that 1 year at Kent State into a job at Arkansas by the end of that month. And we've all moved on. But what a great experience, and every SID should experience something like that, in their lifetime if they're fortunate.
Yeah, you make a great point there too about Kent State did that before a lot of these other schools. Now it almost seems like we know some Cinderella school or quote unquote, small school is going to make it to the Elite Eight or maybe even the Final Four. Nowadays, that's almost, you just don't know who it's going to be, but somebody's going to do it. Back then, that was unheard of. Back then, a small or a mid-major school, that was not something that you would even expect that could happen. But they were a senior dominated team. They were very upper class oriented. And so they weren't intimidated by these guys. And they also happen to have a guy that a lot of you as an audience will recognize the name. They also had Antonio Gates. Yes, the Antonio Gates that was a legendary tight end in the NFL. He was quite a horse down low for Kent State.
Oh, I tell you, with all due respect to guys like Tony Gonzalez and Gronkowski and the rest, and I'm partial because I got to know him, years ago, but to me, he's, the best tight end in recent history. And it was great to watch him, basically go from a basketball player, even though he was a heck of a football player. And I think even had gone to Michigan State initially to play football before the transfer. But to watch his, career, you move on has been fabulous. At about that same time, Josh Cribbs was the quarterback of our football team and went on to be a great, kickoff returner and punt returner for the Cleveland Browns and a couple other teams. And James Harrison, great all-star linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, the football team, kind of had to struggle some of those years, but was producing some really impressive NFL talent. And just in a few years of having had the opportunity to work with, guys who went on to do what they love, make a little money in the pro ranks and make a name for themselves. And I would say, at least a couple of those folks will be in their respective halls of fame before too long.
Yeah. The MAC has really had some amazing athletes come through, especially in football and basketball, the two sports that most people know about, but all throughout the different sports, they've had great athletes. But I was thinking a couple of years ago, we had the MAC commissioner on, and in doing the research for that show, I started thinking back to when I was at Kent State. I was just there 2 years, but in those 2 years, there were 9 total guys that ended up playing in the NBA that I got to see from the sidelines in the MAC. And so you think about a small or a mid-major conference and to know that in a 2-year stretch, there were 9 guys, now some of them were seniors, some of them were freshmen, but there were 9 guys that I got to see that played in the NBA. And there were a lot of NFL guys, Jason Taylor at Akron, Hall of Famer. He's from Akron. and a lot of guys you mentioned from Kent State as well. Yeah, great stuff. But you also were a part of another great run when you were in the Horizon League with Butler. Butler was this miracle team. What, 2 years in a row they made it to the national title game?
Exactly. So I was there in 2010, and what some people have forgotten through the years is that Butler making it was an incredible accomplishment in the first place. But to know that they were going to be doing it and coming home back to Indianapolis, just a handful of miles down the road at Lucas Oil Stadium from the Butler campus on the near north side, I don't know that we'll ever see something like that again. A Cinderella team in their hometown, and we at the Horizon League were the official local co-host of the event with Butler University. So myself and then Jim McGrath, who was the longtime SID at Butler at that point, were scheduled to run the media operations, unit behind the scenes. And, we get to that week and it's like, well, I guess all the Butler crew is out because they're going to need to, support and be in touch, with their team. And, taking a step back, Butler had a great season, under Brad Stevens, that year. And, again, I think they were a seed that was supposed to win one, maybe two games. And so they get to the Sweet 16 and they win that game. This is out in Salt Lake City, and I'm here in Indianapolis. And my boss calls me, the commissioner, and says, if they win the Sweet 16 game, I want you on a plane out here tomorrow. And they won, which was like about midnight here in Eastern time zone. So I'm on a plane early the next morning and out there to support them. And then they go on to beat, Kansas State in the Elite Eight and coming back to a Final Four. And, then a win over Michigan State, in the national semifinals. And then, what could have been the greatest shot in the history of college basketball, Gordon Hayward's, half-court heave goes in. Again, Butler has been, good by and large, since then under Stevens and a few coaches, since they, were able to make the move ultimately to the A-10 for a year or so, and then certainly on to the, Big East, a lot more national exposure and everything than they might have been receiving in the Horizon League. But to have done that out of the Horizon League, and again, what if that shot goes in, Jamie? We're seeing that shot, every March Madness, ad nauseum. And, it's one thing to hang up, one and then ultimately two. And the second year might have been even more impressive, to do it back to back because they weren't sneaking up on anybody. If not for a poor shooting performance against UConn, two national runner-up finishes is in itself incredible. Can you imagine if they could hang back-to-back national championship banners in the rafters of Hinkle Fieldhouse?
Yeah, that would have been amazing. That was a great run. You mentioned you were a part of the 2010 run, but what a great 2-year run for a team that really set the blueprint. They show what culture is really about. And then people saw that with Brad Stevens leaving, going to Boston Celtics and doing similar stuff there in terms of building a strong culture. But, we talk about Kent State, we talk about the Butlers, those are the programs that set that blueprint for other teams to follow of, upperclassmen doing things the right way, not just maybe, doing it with just, a team full of transfers. Now, obviously that can win. And we see that nowadays a little bit more than we saw it back then, but still there's that secret to success sometimes, which is just working hard, having a great culture, having everybody bought in but regardless, very exciting.
I'll tell you, I don't claim to be a basketball coach. I didn't, play beyond, rec ball in elementary school myself, but the more basketball I see, the more I will tell you, and this is where these experienced teams come into play, teams that trust each other and are willing to make that extra pass. Yes, you need to be athletic. Yes, you need to be able to, shoot and make shots from the outside.
Yeah.
But if you trust your teammate and you're willing to make that extra pass so they can get the glory, I'm telling you, that goes a long, long way. And I would say the same thing, metaphorically speaking, for any of us in any aspect of collegiate athletics, that's number one in my book.
Well, we will get right back to Will in just a moment. But speaking of, he mentioned having great teammates and stuff. We want to remind you that the leadershipplaybook.com makes this show possible. We all want strong, healthy cultures. And the best way to do that, the best way to have a great culture is by having great teammates and positive leaders. That's where the leadershipplaybook.com can help you out. In fact, you'll get 25% off the price when you use coupon code CHOICE, as in success is a choice. So whether you're a coach, administrator, parent, or student athlete, you'll want to visit the leadershipplaybook.com and use coupon code CHOICE to get 25% off. So, Will, we mentioned that you're a fact guy or a trivia guy. You know, everybody in sports, it seems like, likes that kind of stuff. But also with that, you know, you're a sports fan, you know, and so I would be curious. Let's say, you know, you're the associate executive director, but what if you were king of all of sports, king of college sports, let's say. So you've risen above College Sports Communicators and you're now the king of college sports. Is there something that you would like to see changed? What would you do as king of college sports?
Well, from a management perspective, I would love to bring back, and not that this isn't present, but, bringing back more fun for everybody involved in the enterprise. Whether you're the folks like, SIDs or other folks that are behind the scenes, again, as I mentioned earlier, it just ought to be fun. It ought to be something, we all, enjoy, and we understand it's a business. We understand there's a lot of money, in this enterprise, these days, and that's not going away. You need to take that into consideration. But, I could be, someone who said, let's go back to the old days. That's not happening. We have different levels of college athletics, I think, for a reason, whereas the Division III, there's no scholarships and maybe they're only playing in front of a couple hundred fans, but it's important for everybody involved, certainly the student athletes, but those involved on campus, whether in athletics, or without. So, if we can just somehow return some of that, certainly easier said than done. And I'm not going to come with, a bunch of answers here today, but, this is a wonderful thing to be part of. A lot of people get into it because they want to be around sports and maybe they didn't have the athletic ability, to be one of the athletes, on the floor or out on the field. But so many people can be involved. It touches so many people, whether you're talking college sports, you're talking pro sports. So many people enjoy it and want to be, around it, that, if we can keep, the fun part in mind and the exposure part in mind, I think we've created something that's, enjoyable for those in it and hopefully enjoyable for those, who are, spectators or fans that just watch on TV.
Well, talk about enjoyment. I was a point guard when I played. And so as a basketball player, especially as a point guard, assists mattered to me a lot. That was an important stat for me. If I was king for the day, I would like to make the assist stat a little bit different. I want it to be whoever passes the ball gets an assist. If you pass it at any point in time, and in fact, we could maybe even go hockey assist too. You pass to the guy who passes it to the guy. It's just give out assists like we're Oprah Winfrey, giving out cars and giving out prizes. But what do you think about that? What do you think about the assist thing? Just giving it to whoever passes the ball, no matter how many dribbles, no matter what that person does. So if I inbound the ball to a guy, he dribbles all the way up and scores, I get the assist.
Well, for starters, yes, that's spoken as a true point guard, Jamie. And it's amazing how that assist category seems to vary between sports. You mentioned the hockey one, which is almost an automatic and almost always will be two, as long as, two offensive players touch it prior to the goal, and basketball more subjective, as you noted. And I started, learning a little bit more about, lacrosse and helping out at some of those games here at local colleges. And they're a lot more restrictive even than basketball. I mean, if the person that ultimately scores the goal makes any kind of offensive move, around somebody, the previous, person is probably not getting an assist. So let's give everybody an assist, and maybe we can make a few more people happy.
There you go. I figured you could make that happen. So just go ahead, go back to your next meeting, say, you know what? I think this is going to solve all of our woes. This will solve everybody's problems. Not true, but it would solve my problem. Actually, it wouldn't even solve my problem because I don't play anymore. But that would be my thing. That and putting a time limit on volleyball, putting a clock on volleyball, so that the one thing, it's funny, and I'm going down this rabbit hole here. when you start thinking about things you could change. But the interesting thing about like a volleyball or whatever is if you're up and you put subs in, the other team could actually come back and get momentum. You don't run out the clock where you do in basketball or a football. But anyways, I totally digress on that. I totally digress. We've got, let's say, young people listening to this, or people maybe in college sports, but want to make a pivot into the sports information or the communication side of it. Or we've got young people that are in college right now looking to get into this. What kind of advice might you have for people wanting to get into this field?
Well, certainly if you're in college or any other opportunity, to volunteer or get exposed to it, start there. But I would also say, make sure you're doing it for more than the sports. We've talked about how much fun sports is to be around, especially college athletics. But, I recommend that people do it because they enjoy, the job. If you enjoy writing or enjoy video, then certainly communications. If you enjoy publicity and promotion, jump in on the marketing side. Or again, so many jobs, facilities, tickets, operations, things like that. Make sure you like what the job is. Because the aspect of sports will be fun and that'll last for a while. But ultimately, you're going to need to, improve what you do, be good at it, and do it because the job requires that. And more than anything, make sure you're doing it because you enjoy spotlighting others. We always talk about how SIDs are perhaps the worst at promoting themselves because they spend so much time and effort putting that spotlight on others, be it student athletes or coaches, administrators, or the institution, as a whole. So, get in it for the right reasons, enjoy the fun aspect. And, if for some reason you find out that it's not for you, I guarantee you will, come out of it, any job in collegiate athletics with a skill set that is transferable to any aspect outside of the enterprise.
You've been around a lot of college sports programs. Certainly you've seen them, you've observed them from afar. What are some creative things that maybe athletic departments are doing with either their promotions, their communication, or just with their student athletes? Just some things that maybe might generate some ideas in our listeners and our audience for maybe something they can take back to their athletic departments.
Certainly the creative side of things is just off the charts. You can be on any, Twitter page or anything, social media or on websites, and just see the graphic design that is just, incredible. And the skills people have with the technology and the softwares that are available, to them, today, or creative videos. We see the hype videos that are on, jumbotrons before games start, or sometimes they hit the web. The live streaming that, even the smallest college, can stream a whole game, multiple cameras, play-by-play analyst that looks, as professional as what was on the national networks 30, 40 years ago. And here we are. And these are just, again, all ways to promote, the student athletes and to promote, the programs. I was privileged when I was at the Horizon League. This is back in about 05, 06, which in some aspects seems like forever ago. And we started what was then called the Horizon League Network. And we were the first national conference to basically take all our products, starting with basketball, because we knew that's where the viewership was, and start streaming them with technology that a lot of us knew very little about. Most of that was done by SIDs on the campus, sometimes a marketing director, or two. But we basically said, we're not seeing the numbers on any of our national or regional broadcasts, and it's taking a lot of money. We can take that money, put all 10 of our schools, all their basketball games on for the same amount of money. And today you say, okay, that's normal. As I said, even the smallest schools are doing it. And you have, ESPN Plus, which has, hundreds of college games a day, at least from Division I, available for anybody, to watch. And what we were doing then was cutting edge. I don't know that we realized it. And the biggest thing is there was nobody we can go ask and say, okay, how do you do this? We had a couple of advisors who had done something similar. One good friend of mine that was in the Butler TV program. And we're like, okay, we're going to do this. And I don't know that, again, we knew what we were getting into, but to see what happens now and how we, played a small part in how that's become an important aspect of collegiate athletics. No matter where you go to school, you can tell your parents, hey, you can catch my game. And it doesn't have to be basketball. It may be lacrosse. It may be field hockey, sports that previously got next to no, video exposure. And that's all available now. And it's fun to look back and say, we helped build that.
So I read an article that you posted a couple years ago, I believe, where you were talking about don't say just as, or quote unquote just just a, I'm just a fill in the blank, or that sort of thing. Talk a little bit about that article or that philosophy, because I've heard people a lot say, well, yeah, I'm just a whatever.
Yeah, something I've been thinking about for a while. I didn't put it on, paper and in a blog until much more recently, but I've always, coached any mentees that I've had, or certainly, my sons, and said, you're never just something. Yes, you might be the secretary. Yes, you might be the intern, or you might be the janitor, whatever your spot in life is, but you're in that role for a reason. Somebody thought you were the best person to do that job, and we need you to do that job. You got, a janitor, they might've been, looked down on by some people, but do you want to go into a dirty office or a dirty building? Where would we be without administrative, assistants, and how many, sometimes menial jobs do interns do that frees up, those in other positions to, do something different. And when I first finally put it down on paper, it was because I caught myself doing the same, thing. I was, helping out at church one morning with the video stream, and this, person walked in we'd never seen before. And he said, he wanted to talk to somebody. I think he was looking for, some assistance, and he came to the right place. And I off the cuff, I said, well, I'm just helping with the video. I'm not a person that makes a decision in that matter. Went back to my seat and said, how much more would that have meant to him if I said, I am, doing the video person. I can find you someone to help you. And why are we putting ourselves, down? Again, whatever job you're in, you're not just that, you are that. So I hope, some of the people that I've worked with can take that message and say, I might be in this position now, and I want to be in this position later, but I'm not just this now. I am this, and I'm important.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't have to sell yourself short. On the flip side, you don't have to walk around, like you're all that, and you're the most important person, but you can certainly treat other people like they're important, and like you can help them, or at least you can find somebody that can help them. State of college athletics. I assume that you like this, you obviously like college athletics. Hopefully you like kind of the state of where we're at right now. There's certainly always things that can be changed. What's kind of your prognosis on the state of college athletics, and maybe what does the future hold?
Well, it's in flux now. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody that's been around the industry, of late, whether you work in it, or not. Obviously, the things that come to mind are NIL, the immediate transfers, et cetera. And certainly that gets, all the news. And we've got a new NCAA president, the former governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, who came aboard a few months ago. And I know, some of the, the legal pieces are important to the membership and to him. And we probably do need to get some of those at least contained, if not fully figured out, in the near future. So I'd love to say, we're going to be that much better in a year or 2 years down the road, but I think it's going to take some really smart people in some pretty powerful positions to, really get a handle on everything that's going on, because I'm not sure it can continue exactly the way it is right now. And some of that will just take time. Again, if we just had NIL, it's one thing. If we just had immediate transfers, it's probably another thing. But when those, the confluence of those at basically the same time, nobody's got it figured out. And who's going to take the first step, and will it need to be, from a legal, national or state legal perspective, or will, the national associations and maybe the schools themselves figure out the best way to incorporate those, without letting those dominate, an otherwise enjoyable and, historical enterprise.
We'll get you out on this last question here, but it's not necessarily it's not directly related to sports information, college athletics, communicators, but you're around or observe a lot of coaches or athletic directors. We have a lot of coaches, athletic directors, leaders that watch this show, listen to this show. As an observer or someone that's been in athletics for all these years, seen a lot of different styles, a lot of different, good and bad results. What are some things that coaches and or athletic directors can do to make the student athlete experience better, or to make their athletic departments better?
It's two things. When I first say them, are going to sound, so simple. More resources, wouldn't we all? Even though we know there's money in certain aspects of athletics, that doesn't trickle down to every area. And more respect. And I'm speaking more from the administrative side and the folks that work in collegiate athletics. And again, like everything else, easier said than done. But making sure that the coaches are respecting everybody they work with, and SIDs, creatives work their tails off. A lot of extra hours, a lot of times, of their own, accord. But pull them in, make them be part of your team, but still make sure they know they have their independence. Just because the coach says something shouldn't mean the SID just goes out, and does it. It should be, a team effort. And when you extend that to administrators, ADs, encourage that work-life balance. We've heard that word or that phrase a lot over the past number of years, and but everybody's trying to win. we understand that, and it's a lot of time the extra hours are just part of that. But and this isn't just true of athletics communications, but college athletics as a whole is losing a lot of good people who are finding opportunities that are maybe a little more 8 to 5, a little more controlled in the time required than collegiate athletics, and they probably won't find some of that fun aspect that we've talked about if they go off into corporate America, but they're making a trade-off. And I would just ask ADs and others in some of those positions to make sure you've made it a good work experience for everyone involved. We need good people in collegiate athletics. We need that to continue. I'll speak specifically of athletic communications, that this is a good place to be. There's folks like me who have been in and around it for decades, and many longer than me. But can we bring back the fun? Can we get to the work-life balance point? And above all, make sure we're putting the student athletes first.
Well, he's Will Roleson, and go ahead and check out all the great things that his organization is doing. collegesportscommunicators.com, collegesportscommunicators.com, or go ahead and follow Will on Twitter at Will Roleson, at W Roleson. So at WROLESON, at W Roleson. So Will, we definitely appreciate all the work you're doing in college athletics. It's awesome. All of us love sports. We love college athletics as well. So thank you so much for that. And for everybody watching this, we appreciate your attention. We appreciate you checking out the show. If you would be so kind as to hit that little thumbs up or the subscribe button, the like button, whatever it is, share the show with a friend. Share it with somebody that likes athletics as well. They will probably get quite a bit out of this episode since it was about sports. So until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?